Which Side Podcast is a proud member of the Which Side Media Collective.
This is episode 67. We have Mandy Skinner on from the Beehive Collective.
Yeah, they do a lot of awesome stuff. I have some of their posters personally.
You actually introduced me to the Beehive Collective.
Yeah.
They're pretty
fucking awesome.
I have no words to say. They're fucking amazing.
Yeah.
Like, if you haven't seen them, you gotta check them out.
Just look at their posters online. And then order some, but they're just fucking amazing. That's all I can say.
Yeah,
there's not a better way.
Go to their website, look at them, give them money. That's exactly the steps that will happen. So that they're that amazing. So I really hope you enjoy this one. What events do we have going on this week?
In New York, there is a political prisoner letter writing dinner at 7 p.m. Eastern Time sharp. It's at Cage, which is 83A Hester Street in New York, New York. It's free to go, so you should go.
Did you know February 19th, 1910, 300 streetcars were destroyed during the Philadelphia transit strike?
Did not.
Fucking love the Slingshot. If you like these things every week, they're in the Slingshot Daily Organizer put out by the Slingshot Collective. Find it at your local info shop. Enjoy.
Hello?
Hello.
Much better.
Yeah? Okay,
Yeah.
good.
Awesome. So, I'm Jordan.
And I'm Jeremy, by the way.
Hi, I'm Mandy.
Nice to meet you.
Yeah, you too. Thanks for having me on the podcast.
Yeah, no problem. We usually try to just go right into it if that's fine with you.
Yeah, sounds good.
It's a little early for me, though. I haven't drinking my first tea yet.
What time zone are y'all in?
We're in Mountain Standard, so it's like 10:30.
Okay,
It's really not
yeah.
that early. I'm just being lazy.
Yeah.
It's Sunday morning.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you have to be a little bit lazy on a Sunday.
That's true. That's what they're for.
So, how did you get involved in the Beehive Collective?
I've been involved with the Beehive on and off for years, and really everyone in the collective has kind of a different story about how they got involved and how they relate to the Beehive. I got involved the summer of 2004, so almost 10 years ago now, and there was a team of bees touring through the Midwest where I was living on spring tour, and I had studied in Mexico the year before and learned a lot about the Plan Puebla Panama, this regional infrastructure development plan that the Beehive was just starting to research. And so there was a whole other team of bees on this big research trip at the beginning of 2004 throughout Mexico and Central America that I heard about from the other bees who were on Midwest tour. And it was just this moment in my life where I was really excited about the work of the Beehive that I'd been seeing around for a few years at that point, and really had been really had all these experiences in Mexico the year before, had heard so many people's stories that were the same stories that the Beehive was working on this new massive illustration about. So it was just this moment where it made sense to go connect with the Beehive and see how I could be a part of that project. So that was what brought me into the collective in the summer of 2004, was really wanting to be a part of this big new graphic that was just being started. And then 9 years later, we just printed that graphic last year.
Wow.
So it was this long project that I was, involved in different ways from almost the beginning. And then I've been I did a lot of work with the Beehive for a few years, and then I left for a while and did other stuff with my life, and stayed connected here and there, and then really just in the spring of 2012, jumped back into the Beehive more full time again to help get the Mesoamerica Resiste poster launched, which is the big project we've been focused on for the past couple of years and for a long time. But yeah, so that's a little bit of my history with the Beehive. I do a lot of education and organizing work with our graphics. I tour a lot, also do a bunch of administrative stuff too. A lot of us wear different hats, but my primary role within the collective has been on the education side.
That's awesome. I saw that the Mesoamerica just got funded on Kickstarter fully. That's awesome.
Yeah, that was big. We had been planning to do a big online fundraising push for a while to help fund a big print run of that poster. And, even just making the video for the Kickstarter campaign took months longer than we thought it would, kind of thing. Like the project has always had its own timeline and has been a lot bigger than we realized from day one. So that was really exciting to be able to make a video about the project and share it with a lot of people. And it was definitely really an awesome way to be able to connect with people all over the world in a really short amount of time to share the story of that poster by having that little video that could go viral. And we got way more backers of that Kickstarter campaign than we anticipated, and so it's been a lot of work to keep up with that over the past couple of months. Not only just mailing everything out and just like using that as a distribution moment to get the work out there, but also keeping up with all the correspondence and all the media requests. And it's been really cool that we've been hearing from people all over the world.
So for anyone not familiar with Beehive Collective, would you mind explaining what it is and what you guys do?
Sure. Yeah, we are an arts, kind of an activist art collective. We started around 2000, and we say our mission is to cross-pollinate the grassroots by creating imagery for use as teaching tools. And we do that in a bunch of ways, but we are most known for our big, large-scale narrative graphics, these large format posters that tell stories. And we also take those same graphics and blow them up really big on fabric banners that we can travel with and hang up anywhere, outside or in a building or wherever we can find a place to hang them. And we often call those portable murals because they are the way our graphics are made. It's a whole lot of stories on one page, just like a mural on a wall, but we can carry these anywhere. And all of the scenes that go into one of our big graphics are all different stories that people have shared with us. And we start those graphics with a lot of firsthand research. So going on listening trips to connect with communities and organizations that are organizing around the issues that we're drawing. And that's where some of that cross-pollinating comes in, is in the actual research process of just gathering many different stories and connecting the dots between a lot of issues that are sometimes talked about separately. And then once we've finished a graphic and we've mass produced it as posters and banners, and we travel around, and then we constantly tour, and that's a way to connect communities as well. We're hearing stories in one place, and then we go another place, and we weave those stories into our talks and presentations. And we were just here, and we heard that they're doing this cool project, or they're organizing around this similar issue, and how does that connect to what you all are doing here? And so there's all these levels of storytelling that we use the graphics for. both like the specific stories that are in the illustration originally, and then all the layers of stories that get added to it as we travel and talk to more people. So that's kind of our global work of touring with these big graphics. And then we also have a base in eastern Maine, in kind of like rural eastern coastal Maine, in a town called Machias. And we own 2 buildings there. One is a big house where we have living and working space for the collective. And then another one is a community center. That's an old Grange Hall, which is a whole other history we could chat about. And we're involved in a bunch of other projects in town to kind of create more community art space in our town and to support local food systems in our town. And, it's a pretty small town, and there's just all this local work that some people in our collective are really involved with, and then other people are more involved in touring and being other places. We're both like locally rooted and pretty spread out.
And anyone who's worked in the collective knows how fucking challenging it can actually be. So like how like what advice would you have to, making a collective operate efficiently and effectively and actually, get your message across? Because it seems like you guys do a pretty good job at it.
It is really challenging. I don't think we have the answers at all. I think we have tried different things over the years, and a lot of people have come in and out of the Beehive, for better or for worse. So we're all volunteer. It's the kind of thing where if you're working full time on Beehive projects, you're getting a lot of your basic expenses covered out of collective funds, travel and, food when you're on the road, on tour, and, but no one's making any money. So that's a challenge right there. And, people make it work in different ways. And we're working on, for people who are more invested in the local work that we have in Maine, there's definitely a lot of efforts there to create a more stable year-round base for people who want to live and work there and do Beehive work there. We're trying to get more grant funding, trying to like build up local economy stuff that we're connected to, all of that. But for people who are part of the collective and live in other places or who travel a lot, it is challenging to figure out, how to make it all work. and communication is really hard too with our spread out group. And so, so those are challenges. And then with people coming and going from the Beehive, just kind of sharing information and memories, like historical memory of the group across generations of the Beehive. Sometimes there's a lot of disconnect there too. But yeah, so there's a lot of strengths in this decentralized, flexible model we have too. Like it gives people a lot of autonomy. And yeah, so I think that, being really having good communication is key. And there's kind of different ways that we've succeeded and not succeeded in doing that. I don't know. It's hard to, I think the Beehive has evolved a lot over the years. And we often say that we're kind of, one of our taglines in the past has been that we're more of an organism than an organization. But we are, we're both simultaneously this loose collective of educators and artists and activists. And then we're also a 501c3 nonprofit in the state of Maine that owns 2 buildings and has all that going on. So it's, we kind of straddle 2 worlds a lot of the time.
I could imagine that would create conflicts quite a bit in the collective.
Sometimes, it's more just trying to figure out where to kind of like where your energy is going in the group. And I think the biggest thing that is a challenge for us that we make work in different ways is how to have a strong core, like that's holding the center of our group together, so that people can be autonomous and do all this really wonderful traveling and pollinating all over the place, but a lot of it's just really logistical. We do all of our own distribution. We have, we put posters into people's hands when we're out on tour, and then we have a web store, and we literally live 2 doors down from the post office in Machias. So, which I don't know how we'd do it otherwise. We didn't have the post office right there, but we have a big room in our house. It's the distro room, and and we're literally just like walking to the post office every day to mail out orders. With, sometimes that's more 1 or 2 people's roles where they really take it on and they're rocking out on distro, and then sometimes it's like whoever's around. When we have lots of volunteers in the summer, and people helping out with the web store is a great way to help out, mailing stuff out. So it's but I guess what I was trying to say is that like it's logistical of like we need to keep bees who are out on the road stocked with materials, so all of that stuff is usually coming from Machias, from this little town in like rural Maine, and we're mailing out posters all over the country, or our printer stores a lot of posters for us too, and that's outside of Boston. So sometimes, we'll go to our printer and package up posters from there and send them out to bees on tour from there. But it's very like, there has to be an investment in the people and the resources that are making that happen, to like hold the core, the administrative core of a group, the like logistical core of printing materials and getting moving materials around. And so, when we have a really seasonal group, that can be stressful at times to figure out who's holding those pieces. And since we're based in this beautiful, beautiful place in Eastern Maine, that's like so beautiful in the summer and so lovely, beautiful year round actually. But we get this influx of visitors in the warm months, and then there's only a few people around in the winter. So it's really seasonal, and that has its pluses and its minuses, to figure out how to balance all the different roles that make the beehive run.
So how many people are typically in the collective, and like what's the lowest you've had and what's the highest amount?
Oh gosh, that's always the hardest question to answer because like I just said, it's our group is really seasonal, and we tour a lot. So we have these seasonal tour cycles, and sometimes we'll have multiple tours going on at the same time because bees are touring in different regions. And there can be a lot of people at our house in Maine in the summers, maybe like 20 people, plus a lot more who come when we have work parties. But maybe like 20 beehive people, and then a lot of friends and visitors and volunteers who come. We had a huge work party the summer of 2011 where it was more than 100 people. Wow. Camping out in our yard and around town. We had this wonderful event last summer called Gab Festry. That was a week-long conference gathering, get-together of wonderful artists and activists from all over the country, got together to talk shop about what we do. And so it's cool to be able to host things like that. And then, and that kind of swells our numbers. And sometimes it's, hard to figure out how many people are doing this work right now. And then, but yeah, usually we say that we're between 15 to 20 people who are really active in the beehive at any given time. And it's not really always a distinction between who's living in Maine and who's not, because there can be really core members of the collective who hold like big pieces of the puzzle of what we do, who who aren't in Maine all the time, and so even when there's only like 3 people living in the house in the winter, there's this broader network of bees that are out there doing lots of beehive work at the same time, but it's just different kinds of work. So yeah, we don't have like a clear collective membership structure, turns out. So it's something we talk about all the time. There's a lot of flexibility for people to relate to the collective in different ways, and that can be really great. So
I can see the challenges in that, but also the benefits in it, because every collective I've ever been a part of, it's always that balance is really hard to find for people.
It's super hard to find, and sometimes we just had a little retreat last week we usually have annual meetings once or twice a year, and we just had a retreat that was focused on the Mesoamerica poster specifically, and work we're doing with the poster this year. And we didn't dig into a lot of collective structure conversations that we usually do at annual meetings, but we did have a moment where I was like, can someone just give me a job description, because I don't know. Because we end up wearing all these different hats at different times of the year, and and that's, but there is a lot to be said for having a job description and a supervisor who's telling you what to do, and so we do, sometimes we try to create those structures for each other, but it also often doesn't work like that, and so I feel like we're open to constant evolution, and we're also recognizing that that some structure is really great, and especially for our local work, we do have the option of soon and down the road to have 1 or 2 funded positions. We would really love to have a funded position for financially related things. So we're, positions like that, it's, so yeah, like bookkeeping, finances, and some of our like local community arts work. I feel like those are the kinds of things we want to have more structure for, so that those things can be solid, and then other people can come and go from the collective in different ways.
That's definitely a challenge.
Mm-hmm.
For sure.
So every time I've looked at one of your murals, I've never seen the same thing twice. Like, I always pick out other little things, and I'm always blown away about how fucking much is in them. Like,
yeah,
how the hell do you go from like a blank piece to these unbelievable pieces
that are just all connected?
Yeah, like, it's totally amazing. Like, I still haven't looked at a mural and just not been blown away every goddamn time.
Yeah, our latest work, Mesoamerica Resiste, is really 2 posters in one. So it's like double the mind-blowingness. And and we worked on it for 9 years, I mean, not like locked in a room for those 9 years working on it 24/7, but obviously, like, there are different eras of that project and different teams of people working on it. But that was it's a lot of time and thought, and there were actually 3 different versions of the Mesoamerica graphic, and the final, there is like one original at the end of this whole process. There's a beautiful original, 2 beautiful original drawings, and the original of the True Cost of Coal graphic is also really beautiful to look at. So all of our illustration work is hand drawn, and the actual illustration that makes it onto that final big piece of paper is really just the last step in this much longer process. And I mean, the drawing takes a long time too, but but we start with the research, the listening trips, I mentioned before, and and that's a process of conversation with many different groups and communities and individuals. And just synthesizing that information is a big part of making our graphics. Is, lots of conversation, lots of brainstorming. We make mind maps a lot to like take a big concept and then draw the lines between, all the connections it has to all these other concepts, and map out the interconnections. And so we have lots of really cool mind maps for different graphics that then they're kind of the word versions of the images that get created afterwards, but also help us like keep track of all these big concepts we're trying to fit in, and how all of the individual stories and specific details are part of this bigger picture. And that's one of our goals with these graphics, is that we're going back and forth between the little picture and the big picture and putting it all on one page, so that you're looking at this whole interconnected system all at once, and you can hold it all in one conversation. And so there's just a team of illustrators that works together to start illustrating those concepts once we do the collective brainstorming and come up with metaphors that work for the concepts we want to portray. And a lot of our research is also researching plants and animals and all of the ecology of the area that we're talking about. And so that's like this double level, this extra level of detail and metaphor that gets added in. And then just so many sketches, so many versions of scenes that get drawn and worked on, down to like the tiniest detail of arguing about the tiniest details, and then when it all starts getting put on one big piece of paper, we use lots of tracing paper to move the scenes around on the page to figure out where it all fits together. And then, by the time the line work finally goes on there and that it finally gets inked, like pretty much all of the content has been worked out already. There's definitely some details that we'll still be trying to figure out, or that we'll add, later on in the illustration. But for the most part, by the time the inking is happening, it's literally just illustration of concepts that have been collectively generated. And like we have some amazing illustrators in the collective who are so talented, and they're often like, that's what people see, and so they always want to know, like, whoa, who drew this, and did you draw this, and what part did you draw? And like, it's very much focused on the drawing. But I remember talking to a couple of the illustrators who were in the like final push for finishing the Mesoamerica poster, and it was tedious. They were like, it was long hours and months in the studio just finishing the shading of stuff that had already been drawn, and they're like, this is not glamorous work, y'all. Like, I'm just staring at this big piece of paper and like making tiny marks on it all day long.
I can't imagine being in one project for 9 years. Like,
Yeah.
I would imagine like after year 4 or 5, you're just like, fuck this.
I want to be done.
Well, yeah, that definitely happened. Definitely happened. And there's some, people who are involved in the project towards the beginning who couldn't keep working on it for various reasons. Some people who left for a while and then came back to it, and there are definitely moments when we were like, this thing is never getting done, and it's like killing the collective. It was like really when the True Cost of Coal poster was started.
Mm-hmm.
It was at this moment when the Mesoamerica poster was in this big lull, and many people in the collective, like, who weren't as involved in the Mesoamerica project, because kind of different teams of people come together around different illustration projects we do, and some of them overlap and some of them don't. But anyway, the coal poster for some of the bees in the collective at the time was this chance to be to take on a big role in a new project and to like have a project that could be finished in a shorter amount of time. Like it was supposed to be this kind of finite project. Like we're going to make a poster about mountaintop removal coal mining, and it's going to be a really specific collaboration with Appalachian organizers, and it's going to be like a 6-month to a year project. And, you know, it's going to be great. And it's going to boost the morale of everyone in the collective. And, you know, from this other project that's just taking so long. And the coal poster ended up taking 2.5 years to make from start to finish.
Wow, Jesus Christ.
So even that, you know, and it's an amazing graphic that tells the deep history of coal, of the industry in Appalachia, and then also zooms out to the bigger picture of energy and climate change and like building alternatives. You know, it's like this whole timeline of a story that that really needed to be told. You know, that mountaintop removal is in the center of, but it's this whole bigger arc of a story. And you know, and then it took a few more years still to finish the Mesoamerica graphic, but you know, we've had a lot of other things going on. And yeah, I mean, we've had, you know, a few people who have stuck with it and have been involved from the beginning, and others who have come and gone. And then, you know, really wonderful newer collective members over the past few years that have really stepped in and breathed new life into the project and helped see it through to the end.
Has there ever been anything you really wanted in the mural that didn't end up getting in the mural?
Oh gosh, probably. I think there's so many stories like that, and it's hard to think of just one. I've spent a lot of time in the studio, or multiple studios, really, because we've traveled around. Studios have had to be built in different locations as bees have been on the road. But I'm not an illustrator within the Beehive, and so, you know, there's definitely a lot of time where I wasn't in the studio when all of those conversations were happening. And so gosh, I wish I could think of a great anecdote for you about this, but I'd have to like think a minute, talk to other bees who were illustrating. But yeah, there's lots of examples of stuff that we have, actually like a whole outtakes folder of sketches from the Mesoamerica poster of stuff that didn't make it in. And we have this huge spreadsheet of species, like, because that graphic has over 500 species of animals, plants, insects. It's really beautiful and incredible, all the different species that we drew. And so we have this spreadsheet of all of those species, and then there's a whole other spreadsheet that's the waiting list, or the waiting room, like all the animals that are in the waiting room waiting to get into the poster. And yeah, there's all these like funny inside jokes that happen when people are in a room together for months on end. And there's been different versions of that graphic. And, you know, sometimes we have scenes that were really too specific, so we've ended up making them more universal. And then we've had like taking out some of those specific references. And then in other scenes, we've decided to put in a really specific detail. But some of those specific details are like, you're not going to notice them unless you know that story. And so, so I really like how there's all these layers built into a graphic where hopefully, like, you know, everyone will get something out of it on some level. And then if you're like a super ant nerd, you might notice like the really cool thing about this one ant species we put in, or if you're a community radio, like low power radio nerd, you might recognize the radio equipment that's in that scene. But so hopefully there's a little something for everyone.
In the True Cost of Coal, I believe there's a fox that has a sign that says, "Which side are you on?" I enjoyed that.
Yeah, definitely.
Like, you can't have
there's
anything.
A lot of really wonderful.
Yeah, I was just say you can't do anything with coal mining and not go back to Florence Reese on that. pretty amazing. But
Yeah, definitely. There's so much amazing labor history in Appalachia and with the United Mine Workers of America and the mine wars, like the early 1900s, was just all this like incredible organizing in the coal fields that was happening, and it was really fun to be able to include a lot of those really specific stories. And yeah,
as I say, like my first introduction into real labor, like unionizing and labor organizing, was researching the Ludlow massacre, and like it's so fucking horrible, and like those people were so strong. Like I don't think people really get how strong those people really were.
And how sad of a story that is.
Yeah, how that it's especially Ludlow is one of those stories that you know, unless you're an activist, I really don't know anyone who know much about it at all, or even have ever heard of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's plenty of stories like that people have not heard of, and I think that's a great thing about the coal poster, is that it brings up all of those labor struggles, the Battle of Blair Mountain, and just, things that were really significant and that didn't quite make it into the history books. So,
what's been your favorite little story that you've uncovered through all your research? I
always have trouble with favorite questions, but well, I mean, one of the things that was taking us the longest in finishing the Mesoamerica poster was the really elaborate bee scene. There's this whole scene of a beehive in a big part of the poster, and filling in some of the details of that scene was left until the very end, and and then we so one of the big things that scene is talking about is native bee species and the importance of native bee species to pollination, and really to all the food we eat. We need bees to pollinate the crops, and there's all of these really special relationships between native pollinators and the plants they pollinate, where it's like this highly specialized, specific relationship. And a lot of we don't actually know that much about native bee species in the US either. There's like a lot of the native bees in North America are small and sometimes get mistaken for like little flies or other insects, and we're just so used to having these European honeybees that are trucked everywhere to pollinate crops, and really bee populations everywhere are in big trouble. But native bee species especially are not paid as much attention to. Anyway, so we were researching all of this around, colony collapse disorder and, bee populations plummeting, and the like incredible industry that is trucking bees all around the place to pollinate crops. And when it's like industrial agriculture that is weakening bees in the first place. So we were trying to figure out the story, like the central story of this beehive. And we stumbled across the story of vanilla, and that became the central piece of the story. Because
I love the story of vanilla pollination.
Yeah. And it just became, it was like a lot of times, something will be blank in the story or on the poster for a long time until we figure out that one thing that fits there. It's like the aha moment, like, oh, this was the right answer to this part of the story. And so the vanilla story was the right answer. So the vanilla industry, we all, there was just like a week where we all did all this vanilla research and like geeked out on vanilla, and realized that most vanilla flavor is artificial. And we consider, and this like vanilla is everywhere, and we consider it to be the the plain flavor, the like default flavor that you get when there's no other flavors of ice cream or whatever. and even in just like popular slang or whatever, like vanilla is the plain thing, right? But the vanilla orchid is actually this incredibly like beautiful plant, and really hard to pollinate, and it has this very specialized relationship with the Melipona bee, native Mesoamerican bee. And we actually heard a funny story that apparently creationists use the story of vanilla and Melipona bees as an example, like as proof of creationism, because they fit together so perfectly. So we're like, wow, that's wild. But they just have this really specific pollinator-plant relationship, and vanilla is really hard to hand pollinate, and so that's why it's like a super expensive thing to buy real vanilla, and why so much vanilla flavoring is artificial. And when Europeans tried to take the vanilla plant other places, like they couldn't figure out how to pollinate it for a while, and it's really labor intensive if you want to cultivate vanilla and hand pollinate it, like if you don't have the bees to pollinate it. So
yeah, and to my knowledge, I think most places it is still hand pollinated, because they don't have that local connection with the with the local bee. I find it amazing, like vanilla in of itself. I always find it funny that people think it's such like a plain flavor, but the artificial vanilla is the vanillinine, which is, I can't remember which wood it comes from. They usually pull it from.
It comes from different things. It can come from paper pulp, like byproducts. It can come from coal tar, and it can also come from beaver anal glands.
Yeah, I knew that one. Yeah.
Which is the one people always love to say.
Which is the,
because then everyone's like, "Oh, good."
That's actually the reason I make my own vanilla extract from pure vanilla, to make sure that it's not from a beaver, being vegan. So
definitely. So it's just like these weird industrialized food product systems that exist now, that where when you see natural flavors written on something, like you have no idea where that comes from.
No.
And it's oftentimes these industry byproducts that are labeled as natural flavors. It's very strange.
It's pretty fucked up.
Yep.
So every year we throw something called the Witchside Rendezvous, and last year was our first time that we're doing it. But we tried to focus it around a struggle, and our local struggle that time was tar sands. But how do you go about finding something to base these stories about? Because that's hard for us.
Mm-hmm. Well, we the Mesoamerica poster that we just finished was the third poster in a trilogy of posters, or what we started to talk about as a trilogy that started in 2001 with the first big Beehive poster about the free trade area of the Americas. And so when the Beehive was forming in the early 2000s, that was kind of, the height of the anti-globalization protest summit thing that was happening. And so, we were going to all these big protests against the WTO, the World Trade Organization, and the International Monetary Fund, and the World Bank. And that's how we got our posters out into the world, was on the streets of these major mobilizations against these big institutions, and also doing just being connected to Latin American solidarity work and like food systems work against biotechnology, and like those were all the big issues that Beehive folks were connected to. And the FTAA poster was really an event poster. It was kind of like used as a mobilizing tool to get people to the protests of the negotiations of the FTAA that were happening in Quebec that year in 2001. And then and that poster has gotten reprinted a few times we reprinted it to go to the protests in Miami in 2003. And so like that's one realm of poster that we do is like event posters or campaign specific posters. And we have a handful of smaller ones we've done over the years for specific groups or campaigns that people have asked us to do or that we've wanted to support. And sometimes we'll take a piece from one of our larger graphics and turn that into a smaller poster because we have these projects that take years to finish, and it's like we can't just turn on a dime and start another big project whenever anyone asks. So anyway, like I always say that it was kind of that moment in time that chose the content for the graphics we were working on. So in 2001, Plan Colombia had just been announced, the U.S. funding for the war on drugs in Colombia under the name of Plan Colombia, this militarized aid package that had just started. And so, and one of our collective members, his family is Colombian, so there's a personal connection there as well. But really, it was what everyone was talking about at the time in this, climate of big protests against some of these institutions behind these kinds of plans. And then, the free trade, so the FTA was being negotiated. Plan Colombia had just been announced. And then also in 2001, Plan Puebla Panama was announced as this regional development plan for all of Mexico and Central America, which was like the infrastructure for the free trade agreements that were being negotiated, NAFTA and CAFTA and the FTA. So, and the drug war, and then the drug war spread to Mexico. So it's like this kind of all these big things that are happening that the U.S. is connected to with the trade agreements and with U.S. policy in Latin America. So we wanted to create graphics that could help tell this story that's like a little bit specific to U.S. and Latin America stuff, like definitely like the Americas has been a big focus of ours, but also just trying to create graphics that like are telling stories about like how the global economy works and how these free trade agreement works. And these are these big issues that are affecting the whole planet right now. So that's how that big trilogy of posters that are our three main posters came around. And then with the True Cost of Coal poster, people had been asking us for a while to make a poster about climate change and about the tar sands and about mountaintop removal. We ended up choosing to focus on mountaintop removal, coal mining, because it was more, it was a story closer to home, based in the U.S. And we were already connected to a lot of organizing around mountaintop removal, and we thought it would be really good, also a really good way to connect to all those other struggles around resource extraction and extreme energy. So we've been touring with the coal poster for the past few years, but we also use it to connect to the tar sands, to connect to fracking, to connect to other forms of mining, to kind of have that conversation in a lot of different communities. And the same thing with the Mesoamerica poster. Like the stories are about resource extraction. They're about big mega highways and dams and power towers, like coming in to communities or displacing people or sending energy to cities and factories rather than people who need it, So it's a lot of the same themes. Also, colonialism is a big theme in all of our graphics, and so kind of connecting and like north-south solidarity in the Americas is a big theme as well. So I don't know, like we get requests to make new graphics all the time, and sometimes if they're small, we're able to take them on, but we don't have a plan for a next huge graphic as of right now. We're really just going to be working on touring with the Mesoamerica poster for the next little while.
So what got you involved in activism? I
was a student activist. I I went to school in Indiana and was really involved with United Students Against Sweatshops. That was between 99 and 2003. And so that was when United Students Against Sweatshops was formed, like was right at the beginning of when I was in college, and my campus was super involved. We had a really strong local group doing a lot of student labor solidarity work. So it was through that organizing and through that national network that I kind of cut my activist teeth and learned about the global economy and got connected to lots of other Latin American solidarity organizing. I also did a lot of volunteering for local environmental organizations with the Indiana Forest Alliance, and just part of this larger network called Heartwood that connects a bunch of states in the Midwest and Southeast. So yeah, I feel like I've personally always straddled environmental and social justice activism from early on. And so the Beehive for me was this really wonderful way to continue bridging all those different social and environmental issues and tell the bigger picture.
What has been your family's reaction to your activism?
Yeah. Oh gosh, they're really supportive. I'm sure they'd love for me to have a full-time job and all that, but they're really supportive. Yeah.
Do they have any posters themselves?
They do. They have a couple. Yeah.
That's cool.
And my nieces really love whenever I have Beehive banners at my sister's house, they love to play with them. I don't know. They're used to Aunt Mandy having lots of posters around the house, and I don't know. So yeah, I think Beehive posters are a really awesome way to talk about stuff with your family, because it's kind of it's a thing that you're looking at that's right in front of you, and people can ask questions about, and you don't necessarily have to have a big background and all the issues that are in the poster. You can just look at the images and talk about the stories together. So it's a way to spark a conversation that might be hard to start otherwise.
Yeah, I was just at a party the other day, and they had Mesoamerica and also I think they had Plan Colombia and also the True Costa Coal all on the walls. But we were standing around the True Costa Coal, and I think, and just looking at it and talking for hours about the different things that it was really an interesting experience. I liked it a lot.
Cool. That's awesome. Yeah, we love that when we have the chance to listen to other people talk about the Beehive graphics, because we're often the ones, up in front of a big group of people telling stories and doing a presentation. And it's really fun to be at big events where we hang banners up and you're not presenting all the time, but you get to just kind of hang out and listen to people talk about it. And we try to make a lot of our stuff as interactive as possible anyway. And but yeah, it's great. It's really, really fun to just listen to people interpret the images on their own.
So every activist I've ever talked to has these little aha moments that just get them inspired, that to someone else might seem like nothing, but they reinvigorate them. What's one of your little aha moments? If you want, I'll tell you one of mine, and it's still one of my favorite ones.
Sure.
Okay,
go for it.
It was the 2000 DNC protest in, I think it was LA, and as part of the Black Bloc, and as we're marching down the street, we turned a corner, and about 200 yards in front of us, there was this elderly man in a full suit, a 3-piece suit, waving a black flag that said "No gods, no masters," and I'm just that's fucking amazing. Like, I still have that picture in my head. Like, I have no idea who the guy was. Like, he wasn't like with anyone. He was way ahead of everyone else. Like, just loved it. Like, it's still like, yeah. I hope to be that crazy 80-year-old eventually.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, right? Like, yeah. We I feel like as the Beehive, we especially when we're touring all the time, when we go to big events, we get a lot of questions. We often have like bets going about like how many times people will ask us certain questions, and we'll have like a little secret log going behind the table kind of thing. So and you know, we seem to attract all the like wildest people who just want to tell us all kinds of things. So including the like 80-year-old men in gorilla suits or whatever. So totally hear that. I don't know. Yeah, I definitely love those moments when you're when those like public space moments when anything goes and you can kind of just when you appreciate that people are not following the rules or whatever, and those are great. I don't know. I have trouble thinking of examples sometimes. One story I used to like to tell a lot, which is just it's Beehive related, but we have lots of these moments on tour that I think are the moments where you're like, yeah, wow, this is why I'm doing this, and this is reinvigorating. But one of my early Beehive moments that I just thought of since you said that was at the RNC in New York in 2004.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like one of the first big events I'd been at, like busking Beehive posters on the streets of New York City. And I was coming back from some rally I'd gone to as kind of a solo bee, because we were spreading ourselves out around the city to go to different events. And I'd given out all my posters to all the kids that had swarmed around me earlier in the afternoon. And I was walking back to the subway, and all I had was this basket on my back that had the like huge 32-foot long Plan Colombia banner in it, and like nothing else with me, just that big old banner. And the basket had this sign on the back of it that said posters about globalization for use as teaching tools. You know, 'cause we like had these baskets that we'd use on the streets a lot. Anyway, I'm walking past this apartment building, and this woman shouts out from behind me in Spanish, I'm against globalization. Like, what do you got there? And so I'm like, oh, okay. So I stop, and I'm like trying to, like I said, introduce myself, trying to explain what the Beehive is. And there's really not a good way to explain the Beehive unless you're looking at a Beehive poster, whatever. So I sat down my basket, I lugged out the 32-foot long Plan Colombia banner, and she helped me spread it out on the sidewalk in front of her apartment building. And I just gave her this like impromptu storytelling of this graphic, and her neighbors started to come out. And she was from the Dominican Republic originally, and was making all these connections to the history of the DR, and it was really beautiful, and like it was, yeah. And I remember her asking me to point out certain things in the poster, and yeah, it's just like this really intense like story sharing. And then she gave me her address so I could mail her a poster, and I put the banner away and like went on my way, you know. and so that was really awesome. I love those moments of connection with people that you totally wouldn't have had otherwise.
That's awesome. I love that.
Yeah.
I'm always blown away about the little things, how far they actually go, and like you never know, like the ripple effects of like those little actions, you know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you never know. And a lot of our work is like that. You know, we have some ongoing relationships and collaborations, you know, where we'll hear about what people are doing, or, you know, we just movements and relationships that we have that we keep connected to. But most of our work is just throwing these seeds out into the world in the form of these posters, and, you know, and we don't even know where they end up. And, you know, people will say, oh, we saw your poster in this place or this place. And we'll be like, wow, really? Cool. And, you know, sometimes people will send us photos of what they're doing, or, you know, stories. But a lot of times we just don't even know. So it's a big leap of faith to work in education, or to like put your artwork out there and hope it's meaningful to people.
So how can, excuse me, how can people connect with you and the Beehive Collective?
Well, we have a website. It's beehivecollective.org. We are also on Facebook, Beehive Design Collective. You can find us there. And we have a Twitter account that we use sometimes. Beehive Design. We're really trying to get better at the whole social media thing.
I don't get it
especially,
personally.
It's challenging. But yeah, those are all the online spaces you can find us. We have a web store on our website, so you can order posters and patches and a graphics DVD full of clip art. And we also tour a lot. So if you're interested in bringing the Beehive to your town, there's on our website under tour and booking and bring the bees, there's a page that has a presentation request form. You can fill that out, be in touch. Our email address is pollinators@beehivecollective.org. And yeah, we also love visitors. So if you ever find yourself in Maine and want to come all the way up the coast to Machias, give us a ring. Our phone number's on the website, or just stop by. And if we're on tour near you, then definitely keep an eye on our tour calendar. We're working on updating it now. We have a big tour happening this spring in the Great Lakes and Midwest region. And that's kind of a cool tour that is connecting a lot of local water issues in that area, and mining issues in that area with the Mesoamerica graphic and the coal graphic. So it's kind of a powerhouse of a tour that is very regional, but also using a couple of our bigger graphics to draw connections. And then there'll be other bees buzzing around in other places this year. So yeah, we might cross your path.
Awesome.
So we end every episode saying fuck, shit, damn. Would you mind saying it for us this week?
You say what?
Fuck, shit, damn.
All right. Fuck, shit, damn.
Awesome. Thank you.
Y'all are hilarious.
This week, you heard,
The Shins, new slang.
and now you're listening to,
The White Stripes, 7 Nation Army.
and as always,
El Comandantes.
which side are you on?
Please remember to rate and review us on iTunes. It helps get us more listeners.
And like us and follow us on social networks, whichsidepodcast.com/social for a list of all of our social.
And if you happen to be buying anything online through Amazon, please click through our search function on our website, whichsidepodcast.com. Doesn't cost you anything, gives us some money, but only do that if you're already doing it. Buy local if you can.
And
We are terrible affiliates.
we really are. Oh well. Welcome.
Yeah.
Thanks for the money.
Yeah.
And yeah, if you wanted to get a membership, you can still get a membership by getting us something off our wish list or donating. Wish list would be your best option. There's things as low as $3 all the way up to hundreds of dollars. So they're all things that we could use for our collective and to help make this podcast better.
And we get a kickback on those purchases.
Yeah.
So it's awesome. It's a win-win-win-win-win for capitalism.
Everyone's a winner
Oh, yeah,
for capitalism.
for capitalism. Fucking ANCAPs. Fuck you.
Fucking ANCAPs.
Fuck shit, damn.
Fuck you, damn.
Which Side is produced by the Which Side Media Collective.